All right, so in order to bring image sequences, right, we learn how to convert video into image sequences using QuickTime, right? So now what we need to do is we need to bring those image sequences as a texture on a polygon plane. So I need to know the dimensions of that polygon plane based on one of the image sequence. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to where the project is. I'm going to open my project, and I save all the image sequences in folders inside of your source images. That way, when we go to the hypershade and we create a shader with those image sequences, it'll know where to find them. So I'm going to go to my bouncing ball, and when I select one of my images, whether it's a Mac or a PC, it will give you the dimensions right here on the right-hand side. And it doesn't want to do it right now. It's trying to embarrass me. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to open this file right here, this image sequence, in Photoshop. Let's give it a second. And I'm going to use Photoshop to tell me what the dimensions are in pixels, but also in centimeters, because we are using centimeters as our units in Maya. I will write them down, right? So now inside of Photoshop, I can go to image, image size, and it will tell me exactly, it will tell me the dimensions for this image right here, right? So this image is 1280 by 720. However, I can switch from inches to pixels to centimeters in my width and height. And now I know that this image right here is 45.16 centimeters by 25.4 centimeters. And I'm going to hit OK. And because we are working in centimeter units inside of Maya, we can double check by going to Windows, Settings, and Preferences. And under Preferences, if I was to go to Settings, notice that we have centimeters for our linear units. I'm going to hit Save. Now I'm going to go to my polygon shelf, and I'm going to double click on the polygon plane. I want to always reset my settings. So I'm going to go to Edit, Reset Settings. So for the width, since we are working in centimeters, I'm going to type in 45.16. And for my height, I'm going to type in 25.4. Now the width dimension does not matter because we're only using this texture that we're going to apply to this image plane just as a reference. So I'm going to type in a width of 1 by 1, which is the minimum, and I'm going to hit Create. And as you can see, we have a polygon plane with the same proportions as our image sequence. Go for it, man. Yeah, I can totally do that. So Camtasia and pause. All right, so next what we need to do is I need to create a shader that will have the image sequence and then apply it to this polygon. I'm going to change the background color by going to Alt B so we can see this better. And I'm going to click on the hypershade. And we are going to create a very basic Lambert. So I'm going to click on this Lambert right here. Oh, wait. Delete. That's to make this one bigger. Where's this one right here? Oh, here you go. All right, and I'm gonna select a Lambert, plain and simple Lambert. And I'm going to name this Lambert image underscore sequence texture. So what we want to do right now is we want to import the image sequence. I'm going to go to the color right here on the far right hand side, and I'm going to attach a file. And let me clean this right here to bring in something that we've created into our node editor. Just middle mouse, drag it into the node editor, let go, and then you want to see your inputs and your outputs. So notice that we have our Lambert 3 SG. SG stands for shading group. This is the actual shader, and this is the file that we're going to import. To import the image sequence, the very first thing that we're going to do is click and select your file node. Get rid of the filter. We don't want any filters right here. And under the image name, what we're going to do is we're going to click on this little folder, and notice that it's going to take us I'll do that like this so it's less dramatic. And notice that it's going to take us to our source image folder inside of our project. So our project is week 4 video references, and it's taking us directly to our source image. Source images folder, this is where we're going to save all our image sequences. We are going to open the bouncing ball reference 01, and we're going to only select the very first frame of our image sequence. I'm going to hit open, and you will notice that if I was to go to my time slider and I scrubbed, we cannot see anything. That is because now we have to assign our shader to our geometry. We can do this different ways. We can find our shader right here, image sequence, and I can middle mouse drag it onto our polygon, or I can select the polygon and I can right mouse button over this shader and go to assign material to selection. Now we cannot see the texture because we need to click on this button right here, or either that or hit the 6 key, and there you have it. We have our image sequence. Now one thing that you're going to notice, you will notice is that if I go to my top view, so I can see a flat version of this image sequence, notice that this image right here is stretched out. If I go to the original file, and on a Mac you can hit the space bar and you will be able to see this image. Notice that our image has been stretched out upwards. So this happens because if I select, for example, my file and I go to the attribute editors, notice under the sample icon that we have a square image. 3D programs do not like any file format unless it's square. So out of our rectangular image, what we need to do is we need to convert it into a square image, not a square image. To do that, what we need to do is we need to select a node for our file node right here, and I'm going to go to the input, and what we're looking for is this node right here called the place to the texture. If I was to expand my material viewer, we can see the image. Notice that the image right here is in a square format. So I'm going to close the hypershade. I'm going to select this polygonal plane. And if I go to my image sequence texture node, right here, and then click under File, and then to go up the stream of our connection, again, let me show you what the hypershade looks like. If I was to clear the node editor, middle drag my shader right here, and then click on the input connections and output connections, which is the middle icon right here, you will notice everything that's input and the output. So we want to select the place to the texture because this controls our bouncing ball image. Now, let me close the hypershade. We know that our image is stretched out. We don't know if this image is stretched in the Y direction or the X direction. So you will notice that if I was to go to my place 2D and under coverage, if I control one of my directions, I will be able to see what's being stretched. Now, I don't know which direction it is. So you know, when you see these input values, you have to read them in this order. You have to read them in this order, X, Y, and Z. We only have two here because we can only move the coverage in Y or in X. So I'm going to type in 0.5 and see what happens. And nothing happens. That means that the coverage is fine on this direction, which is the Y. So our issue is going to be this one right here. So let me type 1. And I'm going to go for 0.5, see if anything happens. So this texture right here is repeating. If I select this right here, one of the first things that we have to do is realize that this is a repeating texture. That's why we have wrap U and wrap V. What we want to do is we want to disengage the wrapping. We don't want this texture to be repeating because we want to be able to control its height and width and fix this stretching problem. So read these value windows as the first ones are always going to be X and the second ones are going to be Y. So for example, if I type in 0.5, notice that we get a shrinkage in the wrong direction. So I'm going to put this back to 1. So it's got to be this one right here. And we know that this is the right one because it's Y. Remember, X, Y, and if we had a third input window, it would be Z. So if I type in 0.5, notice that our image is getting more and more adjusted. So I know that the values are closer to 0.563. I'm going to type that in, and there you have it. Now our image sequence proportion matches the geometry. Now this right here, if I go back to my file node, again, if you cannot find it, go to the hypershade and read it in this order. We were working on the place to the texture node. This node controls our image, in this case an image sequence, which is the color for this shader right here. So what I want to do, I want to select my bouncing ball image, and this is not going to work if I close this window right here. As you can see, if I scrub, all I have is one single image. So what we want to do is we want to tell Maya that this file is not a single image but an image sequence. So we're going to go to use image sequence and we're going to click on it. And notice that under image number, we have this light violet color. This means that an expression has been created. So now every time I scrub on my timeline, I can see all the images in this sequence. Now we are going to go right towards the end of our image sequence, which will be further down the road. I'm going to keep scrubbing there. So our last frame is frame 49. If I go to frame 50, we don't see anything. So in our range slider, we can type in 50, we can type in 49 right here. And now all we see is the entire image sequence. And this is how we bring in image sequences in Maya. The last thing that I would recommend would be to put this image sequence, this plane right here, inside a display layer by going to this icon right here on the far right hand side. And then I'm going to double click on the name so I can get the edit layer. And I'm going to rename this image underscore sequence. And I'm going to make this yellow. And I'm going to change the display type to reference, hit save. That way we cannot select this. And this is how you bring in an image sequence in Maya, apply it to the color of a shader, and then apply the shader to a piece of geometry that has the same proportions as your frame, your video frame, so we can use it as a video reference for our animation.